1. Whispers in room 213. Clara's excitement bubbled over as she unlocked the door to room 213. The historic college dormitory, with its Gothic architecture and ivy-covered walls, was a stark contrast to her modern suburban home. The room was spacious, with 2 beds on opposite walls and a large window overlooking the campus. The first night, as Clara lay in bed, she heard faint whispers. She assumed it was her roommate, Emily, talking in her sleep. But when she turned to look, Emily was sound asleep, her breathing even and deep. Clara dismissed it as the creaking of the old building and drifted off. The whispers continued every night. Sometimes they were so faint that Clara thought she was imagining them. Other times they were clear, though she couldn't make out the words. "It's just the old pipes," Emily would say dismissively whenever Clara brought it up. One evening, as Clara was studying in the common room, a senior named Hannah approached her. "You're in room 213, right?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Clara nodded. "Yeah, why?" Hannah hesitated, then leaned in. "Did you know about Eliza?" "Who's Eliza?" Hannah looked around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. "In the 1920s, a girl named Eliza lived in your room. She disappeared one night and was never found. Some say her spirit still lingers." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "That's just a campus legend, right?" Hannah shrugged. "Maybe, but many who've stayed in that room claim to hear whispers." That night, as Clara lay in bed, the whispers grew louder. "Help me find it," they repeated. Clara sat up, her heart racing. She could no longer dismiss them as mere imagination. The next day, Clara began researching Eliza. She found an old yearbook photo of a girl with wavy hair and sad eyes. The caption read, "Eliza Thompson, a bright star with a mysterious aura." Determined to find answers, Clara decided to search the room. She moved furniture, checked behind paintings, and even looked under the beds. Just as she was about to give up, she noticed a loose floorboard near her bed. Pulling it up, she found a dusty old diary. The diary belonged to Eliza. It detailed her life at college, her friends, her crushes, and her discovery of something valuable. The last entry was chilling. "Someone's after me. I've hidden it where no one will find it." That night, Clara was awakened by a cold breeze. The window was open, and standing there was the apparition of Eliza, pointing outside. Clara followed her gaze to the college's old library. The next day, Clara ventured into the library. With every step, she felt Eliza guiding her. In the basement, behind a bookshelf, she discovered a hidden room. Inside were artifacts, glittering and ancient. At the center was a beautiful amulet, glowing softly. Clara realized this was what Eliza had found hidden. But why was it so valuable? And who was after it? As she held the amulet, she felt a presence behind her. Turning around, she saw a shadowy figure. It lunged at her, but Clara, using the amulet, managed to fend it off. The figure screamed and vanished. Clara returned the artifacts to the college museum, ensuring they were safe. The amulet, she learned, was said to protect its holder from evil spirits. That night, room 213 was silent. No whispers, no cold breezes. As Clara drifted off to sleep, she saw Eliza's spirit one last time. The girl smiled, mouthing a silent thank you before fading away. From that day on, room 213 was just like any other room in the dormitory. But Clara would always remember the girl who whispered from the shadows, seeking help to find what was lost. 2. The shadow of floor 7. Jake had always been drawn to mysteries, so when he heard whispers about the restricted 7th floor of his college dorm, his curiosity was piqued. Rumors swirled about it being haunted, with some students even claiming they'd seen shadowy figures lurking in its windows. One evening, bolstered by the camaraderie of his friends, Maya and Leo, Jake decided to explore the 7th floor. The trio sneaked past the security guard, using an old service elevator to reach their destination. The doors opened to reveal a long, dimly lit corridor. The air was thick with dust and cold, an unnatural chill that made their breath visible. The walls were lined with doors, each eerily ajar. As they ventured further, the lights began to flicker. A cold draft seemed to come from nowhere, making the candles they held dance wildly. Shadows moved just beyond their field of vision, always just out of sight. In one room, Jake found an old newspaper clipping dated from the 1970s. It spoke of a student named Alex who had tragically fallen from a 7th-floor window. The article hinted at foul play, but provided no concrete evidence. As they continued their exploration, the atmosphere grew more oppressive. Maya suddenly screamed, pointing to a shadowy figure at the end of the corridor. It stood still, watching them, its form indistinct and constantly shifting. Panicking, the trio tried to leave, but the elevator wouldn't respond. They decided to take the stairs, but as they turned to leave, the doors to the rooms slammed shut one by one, trapping Maya inside one of them. Jake and Leo tried to pry the door open, but it wouldn't budge. From inside, Mia's screams grew louder, echoing with terror. When they finally managed to force the door open, they found the room empty, with the window wide open. Mia was nowhere to be seen. Leo, in a state of shock, muttered about the shadow feeding off their fear. Jake, recalling the newspaper article, realized that the shadow might be Alex, trapped between worlds and seeking revenge. Determined to save Maya and confront the shadow, Jake and Leo ventured deeper into the floor. They found a room filled with old photographs, journals, and a single lit candle. The journals spoke of rituals and attempts to communicate with the other side. Using the journals as a guide, Jake and Leo conducted a makeshift séance, calling out to Alex's spirit. The room grew colder, and the shadow appeared, its form now more defined, revealing the tormented face of Alex. Jake spoke to the spirit, trying to reason with it. "We know what happened to you, Alex, but taking Maya won't change the past. Let her go." The shadow hesitated, its form wavering. Leo, thinking quickly, began to sing a lullaby, one mentioned in the journals as a way to soothe restless spirits. As he sang, the shadow's form began to dissipate, releasing Mia, who collapsed, gasping for breath. With Maya safe, the trio quickly made their way out of the 7th floor, vowing never to return. The elevator doors closed behind them, and as they descended, they could see the shadow of Alex, watching them from the corridor, its form slowly fading away. Back on the ground floor, the trio made a pact to never speak of that night again. But the shadow of floor 7 would always linger in their memories, a reminder of the thin line between the living and the dead. 3. The melody of midnight. Sarah's life at college was filled with the usual stresses, classes, assignments, and social dynamics. But every night, as the clock struck midnight, she was drawn to a hauntingly beautiful melody that seemed to emanate from the old abandoned music hall adjacent to her dorm. One evening, unable to resist its pull, Sarah followed the sound. Pushing open the creaky doors of the hall, she found herself in a grand auditorium, its seats covered in dust and cobwebs. At the center of the stage stood an old ornate piano, its keys moving on their own, producing the mesmerizing tune. Intrigued, Sarah began to research the hall's history. She learned of Lydia, a prodigious pianist from the early 1900s, who had vanished during her final performance in that very hall. Some said she had been taken by a rival. Others whispered of a tragic love affair, but no one knew for sure. Night after night, Sarah was drawn to the music hall. She would sit in the front row, losing herself in the melodies. Soon, she began playing duets with a ghostly piano, their music filling the night. But with each passing day, Sarah grew paler, her energy waning. It was as if the piano was draining her life force. Her friends, noticing her deteriorating health, grew concerned. Rachel, a history buff, dug deeper into Lydia's story. She discovered that on the night of her disappearance, Lydia had been playing a piece she had composed, one that was said to have the power to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Realizing that Lydia's spirit was trapped and was trying to complete her final performance through Sarah, Rachel, along with Sarah's roommate, Jenna, decided to intervene. One midnight, as Sarah played the piano, the apparition of Lydia appeared beside her, guiding her hands. Rachel and Jenna, armed with sage and salt, began to chant an old ritual meant to free trapped spirits. The music hall seemed to come alive. Shadows danced on the walls, and the wind howled outside. Lydia's spirit became more visible, her form flickering between the young pianist she once was and the tormented soul she had become. As the ritual reached its climax, Lydia's spirit and Sarah began playing the final, haunting notes of the composition. The room filled with a blinding light, and when it faded, Lydia's spirit was gone, and the piano sat silent. Exhausted, Sarah collapsed into Jenna's arms. The curse of the melody of midnight had been broken. In the days that followed, Sarah regained her strength. The music hall, no longer a place of sorrow, was renovated and reopened, with Sarah performing Lydia's composition in honor of the lost pianist. The haunting melodies of midnight were no more, but Lydia's legacy lived on, a testament to the power of music and the bonds that tie the living to the dead. 4. The Watcher in the Window. Mark had always been a bit of a loner, preferring the company of books to people. When he was assigned a room in the college dorm that overlooked a dense, sprawling forest, he thought it was perfect. The view was serene, and the solitude was comforting. However, as days turned into nights, Mark noticed something unsettling. Every evening, as darkness enveloped the forest, a figure would appear at its edge, standing still and watching the dormitory. It never moved, but its presence was palpable, a silent observer in the shadows. At first, Mark dismissed it as a trick of the light or perhaps a fellow student pulling a prank. But night after night, the figure remained, its silhouette becoming a constant, eerie fixture. Curiosity piqued. Mark mentioned it to the dorm's janitor, Mr. Grayson, an old man who had been working at the college for decades. Grayson's face turned pale as he listened, and he shared a tale from years ago. A student, driven by a dare, had ventured into the forest one night and never returned. Search parties were sent, but no trace of the student was ever found. With this newfound knowledge, Mark's nights became restless. His dreams were plagued with visions of being chased through the forest by the shadowy figure. Each time, he'd wake up drenched in sweat, the figure's silhouette still visible in the window. Determined to confront this entity and put an end to his nightmares, Mark gathered a group of friends. Lisa, a budding journalist, Tom, a science major, and Ava, who was known for her interest in the supernatural. One evening, armed with flashlights and a sense of purpose, the group ventured into the forest. The trees seemed to close in on them, their shadows dancing eerily. As they delved deeper, they stumbled upon an old, decrepit cabin. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, and the air was thick with a sense of foreboding. Inside, they found journals detailing rituals and attempts to summon spirits from the beyond. One particular entry spoke of a ritual gone wrong, where the spirit of the lost student had been trapped between worlds, forever bound to the forest. Realizing that the figure was the spirit of the lost student, the group decided to conduct a ritual to free him. Using the instructions from the journal, and with Ava leading the chant, they began the ceremony. The forest came alive. The wind howled, and the trees seemed to whisper. The figure emerged from the shadows, its form clearer now, revealing the young man with a look of anguish. As the ritual reached its peak, the spirit let out a mournful cry, and a dark entity, the one that had trapped him, materialized. The entity, angered by their interference, lunged at the group. Mark, thinking quickly, used a protective charm Ava had given him, repelling the entity. With the spirit of the student guiding them, they completed the ritual, banishing the dark entity and freeing the trapped soul. As dawn broke, the group emerged from the forest, exhausted but triumphant. The figure no longer stood at the forest's edge, and Mark's dreams were finally at peace. The old cabin was demolished, ensuring no one would ever tamper with the dark rituals again. Mark's room, once a place of dread, became a sanctuary, the forest view now a reminder of the adventure and the spirit they had set free. The tale of the Watcher in the window became a legend on campus, a story of bravery, friendship, and the thin line between our world and the one beyond. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the Dark Tales Unleashed channel for more such content.